Perfect. Over to you.
Thank you. Like the microphone.
Yes, please. Everything.
Can you hear me now? Yes. Yep. Okay. So now I can do it.
Fine.
Okay, no worries. Thank you very much. First of all, I need to admit that I'm really honored to be here in this prestigious university. And also I feel very, very humble because here in this place with Professors McKinnon, Tabasi, that have been the source of inspiration for Alice in many cases, but also for me personally, it's really, as I said, an honor. I feel very humble, but I also looking into the stuff many of you are doing, like Maya has presented or Professor Sebon. I really feel here a place where I can learn a lot. After the presentation from Maya, I really wanted to withdraw my presentation and start discussing with her. But okay, let's try and do a presentation. I have 30 minutes, but I try to do it shorter so then we can focus maybe on more discussion. So today we are in this 10th anniversary of 10th workshop, and it's about robust decarbonization and resilient logistics, progress in the last decade and roadmap to 2035. And I think it's very optimistic, robust decarbonization and resilient logistics. So there is my first question mark. If we are, I think we have achieved some progress. Question is that if this progress is good enough, is that at the speed that get us into our objective? And probably not. So when we look into this, I also want to mention this special report from the European Court of Auditors, that they are a group of people looking into the EU objectives and assessing to what extent these objectives are achieved, but also if these achievements are because of the European policies. And just in June this year, this report has been published. And it's good because it says that EU climate and energy targets for 2020 were achieved. But it's not that good because it says little indication that actions to reach the 2030 targets will be sufficient, which is in line with what we have discussed. In this side, here you see where the targets are set, what is the projection, and where we are. So eventually for 2030, the previous targets before Fit for 55 were challenging. So now when we want to go to Fit for 55, we see what we should be able to do coming from this one, should be able to do this one, which seems a little bit complicated because it's only 7 years ahead. The other point, it was also mentioned by Maya. It says that we don't know if the 2020 objectives were achieved because the policies or because other elements like crisis in 2008 or COVID, because we also see COVID had a lot of impact in 2020, and then we see it's moving back in 2021. So then it's true that the European Commission is putting a lot of pressure in terms of policies. There are, I could talk an hour of the different policies that and files that are moving into that. But a couple of weeks ago, Parliament voted the new rules to reduce air pollution from trucks and buses, and put these new objectives of 45%. And actually, it's very challenging, and you can see there are here two different angles. The angles of the NGOs that say this is going to create a lot of competitiveness to European market and wherever, but we also see the industry associations that are feared with this, and they really think, for example, as I said, that vehicles, it's good, but we need infrastructure, we need charging, and that takes time. So then this is what is behind their position. While IRU says, because in the voting, it was said, probably we need to accompany this measure with imposing fleets with mandatory purchase. But what this means in terms of competitiveness, in terms of our citizens, if we put this as mandatory, the only thing will happen is that prices will increase. So then everybody in Europe take the ballot and put the money. Will be the only way to achieve that. But that's very complex and complicated and dangerous, because it could mean missing a little bit of competition. So then I think we need to be smarter and not to impose too many things that are not feasible or economically viable. So after this intro that was long, but the later presentation goes fast, I will do a short round of what is Alice, ambition, project surface, in which we have some insights. So then I would more into the content. So Alice is also more or less in its 10th anniversary, and we were recognized as European Technology Platform by European Commission in 2013 and created as an association in 2014-15. So Alice is an association, and here in this slide you see type of companies that are part of our membership, and we have a good representation of different types of stakeholders in freight transport and logistics, from shippers to logistics service providers, ports. At the end, we can have very holistic conversations on topics. We, of course, have a lot of academics, and many universities around Europe are part of our membership. So what we do is actually, or what we get is really European leading companies and experts in implementing logistics and supply chain innovation. So it's really moving from knowledge to action, to create innovation, to put things into the market and go through that with the mission of acceleration of decarbonization in an affordable way. So we develop new concepts, we influence the agenda, we gather knowledge and share knowledge and create collaboration opportunities among our members. So in 2019, and for that, the book of Alan and the work of Alan on decarbonizing logistics was inspirational. We released our roadmap on, or a framework for our roadmap towards zero emission logistics 2015. And we had worked on this for a couple of years, but by coincidence, it was published just the day after European Commission presented their Green Deal and the objective of become climate neutral by 2050. And in this framework, what we put is different 5 areas that are quite linked to the book from Alan on how to decarbonize logistics. And we add also 3 horizontal aspects like report, reduce, and collaborate. So what we see here is that the 3 first elements that are on managing growth, freight demand growth, using the smartly different transportation modes, and sharing and collaboration. These 3 elements are very important, instrumental. Most of the times this comes with a reduction of costs, but in many cases, what it happens is that the transitional cost, the transactional cost to achieve to that is higher than the benefit, or it's very difficult to get this in a sustainable manner. For example, from collaboration, what we see is that from all these collaboration efforts that were mentioned, in most of the cases, some more strategic or important supply chain elements move around the network design of those companies, so those collaborations could not be kept. So then a lot of effort to get something that cannot be sustained in time. But we are working on these three elements. But for today, I focus more on the two other, because we are now Decarbonizing Road Transport conference, and those two elements are more on transitioning the vehicles and the assets. We also created this position paper on the Fit for 55 when the European Commission released these objectives. And here we said in 2021 a few things, and hopefully when we do this review in 10 years, we are grown, okay? Why? Because in that moment for the Fit for 55, the Commission put a lot of emphasis and effort on transitioning assets and energies as a way to reach Fit for 55. And to our belief, achieving the transition of this is needed, is required, but it's going to be very difficult to get this done in a substantial piece or in a substantial way by 2030. We need to do that, but it's very complex that we are going to get enough emissions reduction from this by 2030. The second point is that if we want to do that, we cannot do this looking into the vehicles from one part, looking into the infrastructure, looking into the small pieces. We also need to take care of the operations on top. And this we said a couple of years ago, and now we are at the end of 2023, and we see more and more this was true. Then, of course, we need affordable alternatives to fossil fuels. But in order to do that, the taxation revenues need to be translated into market incentives, and be this very clearly. Then, of course, rail and inland waterways need to truly become part of the solution, but this is a different conference and different issues there. And for sure, carbon measurement and reporting is key. And then in this, we see a lot of good effort, and the Commission is embracing all the effort done with the Global Logistics Emission Council and the new ISO, and now the EU Count Your Emissions reporting. So, going more into the details, what are the instruments the European Union is putting in terms of research and innovation in decarbonizing road transport? And here I wanted to share, you probably know, two partnerships that are under the umbrella of Horizon Europe. One is focused on vehicles, infrastructure, and operations, and Alice is one of the platforms supporting this partnership. The partnership is called 2.0. There is another partnership that is focused on hydrogen. It's the Clean Hydrogen Partnership, and is looking on all types of applications of hydrogen, being heavy-duty vehicles, road transport, one of the areas in which this partnership is focusing. Out of these partnerships, there are few running research and innovation projects running that are the ones in this slide from 2.0, CEFES, Next Track, Escalate, and Empower. And they are looking into our innovation actions, looking into long-haul and medium-haul electric and fuel cell hydrogen vehicles. And there are also projects like H2Haul or More Life that are funded by Clean Hydrogen Partnership that are more looking into the fuel cell part of the cake. And also there is a new project called H2 Accelerate that is still not part of this Avero cluster, but it's putting like 150 fuel cell electric trucks in operations in Europe in the next few years. So I will look into CEFES a little bit more deeper, because it's a project in which Alice is in, and share some insights that we have gathered in this first year of the project. First of all, the challenges that we need to face is that it's not only that we need to reduce the carbon intensity per kilometer per ton kilometer. It's also that the forecast says that we'll have a growth in freight transport in Europe. So we also need to make happen this reduction of emissions of 45% 2030 in CO2 emission standards, meaning that it's the obligations for the OEMs in new sales after 2030. And then how to do that? We need to do to increase transport efficiency. We need to increase the utilization of the transportation modes. This is linked to our roadmap. But also we need to deal with some complexity of European way of doing cross-border, national, regional level legislative framework that what we are seeing now is that it's very complicated when we are working on that. And of course, driver shortage is an other underlying problem. So CEPES, it's a very interesting project for us. We in Alice were looking into this concept on getting the key stakeholders working together in a collaborative project. And for us, the main elements or the main stakeholders for this problem are, of course, truck OEMs, trailer OEMs, providers of infrastructure, then logistics operators, and of course, research. And this is what it's in Alice, in CEPES project. And we are very, very happy of this very practical to the earth collaboration in addressing this problem. And we are really proud of this project so far, because it's moving from concepts to really trying to get this done and check what happens in reality. So these are at the end after 1 year and in these years, and this is the main slide in my presentation, which are the current challenges, particularly of battery electric vehicles. Battery electric vehicles have very limited range. And what we need to do to increase the range is to increase the battery pack. But when we increase the battery pack, this means this is one of the main costs of the vehicle. It's a driver of the capex of the vehicle. While with combustion engines, if we want to increase range, we only need to put a bigger tank. That is hundreds of euros of investments. So getting higher range get us to a very important variable defining the capex of our vehicle. And this is very important. And I'm going to anticipate why. Because when we look into how transportation companies do their decisions now, they say, I buy a truck with 530 horsepower with a range of 2,000 kilometers, and the truck can do everything. And the difference of doing that decision, doing a different decision, is not that much important. But when we look into this in future, probably this will determine that the fleets will have a much broader range, because it will make a lot of sense to look into the emissions of the vehicles and define then the right size of the battery pack. But then this changes dramatically how the sector needs to operate. And there are many underlying effects of this. This is very important, but we also need to look into the payload when we increase battery packs and the effects. Now Commission is on weight and dimensions directive, and they are thinking, maybe we don't increase the allowed weight. What it means for the competitiveness of these solutions when a lot of weight will need to be carried in batteries. So this is very important from the sector point of view, but also in order to run the trucks, you need the trucks, but you need the charging infrastructure. And charging infrastructure is not there yet. It will come, but it's very important that this comes at a very good pace. And what we see now is that in all motorways in Europe, you see a lot of charging points that are designed for cars, but in none of them a truck fits. We had a discussion, very nice discussion with some of these people, said, look, it's very easy. You put the truck, you disconnect the trailer, and then you go with the truck to charge in the charging points. Say, okay, how this can go into a logistics operation? You want us every 300 or 400 kilometers to disconnect the trailer to be able to charge? I don't think anybody can do that. How you train your drivers to do that? It's very complicated. Sometimes we do very strange assumptions on how things will work in future. So, and essentially, it's also that some of our members tell us, look, we can implement charging infrastructure to achieve 10-20% shift. But once we go 10-20% shift, the amount of energy that we will need to deliver through electricity will require upgrading grids. It will require building new cables. And then when we talk to these grid operators, they tell, okay, yes, that's true. But if we want to do that, depending on the country, we need, from the decision is made till this is operating, 5 to 7 years. So it's long-term thing that we need to work. At the end, the element is that incorporation into daily fleet operations is affected by all of these elements and their interdependencies. And these interdependencies, as I was mentioning at front, were not there with diesel trucks. And this is creating probably new business models. And we have here a presentation of Einride, but we have seen other joint ventures like UNA between Scania and Sender going into this truck as a service, and probably we'll see more and more of these ones coming. But this is really a paradigm shift into the sector. So the CEFE's ambition as a project is really to work with real trucks in real operations around Europe, and really demonstrate long-haul operations with battery electric and fuel cells. Then create a pathway to long-haul battery electric vehicles that are affordable, reliable, energy efficient, to allow these longer ranges and get seats light into this, reduce charging times, looking into all these issues and questions to make this happen, particularly looking into the charging and refueling needs, mapping them, trying to get more insights for operators to understand where and when they can charge, and working on this. And there is also an important element, is that when we look into this complexity, we also need to think what the transport operators will need to operate this. And for example, one of our first conclusions is that all this approach on TCO may not be the right approach when you are a fleet owner. Why? Because for some segments or your assignments, the TCO would be 1, or would be more close to be a positive one than in others. And in all these studies, we look as road freight transport, TCO. But that's not reality. Reality is that there are many different types of assignments, many different types of missions. So what we are trying to do in CEFES is saying, put up front not the TCO, but the assignments, the mission profiles, and look for this range of mission profiles, which type of vehicle will be the best vehicle, which battery pack we need to do this, how we can make the TCO possible for this mission with the vehicle. It's not we look into the vehicle and see what it can do. We see what the vehicle needs to do and what is the best vehicle definition. And then there are other tools in terms of routing, in terms of fleet transition. So a lot of elements on how to transition fleets, and particularly also looking into the digital fleet. Going in more details, here you see the map, European map, with all the different demonstrations that will happen as of 2025 with different type of vehicle combinations. You see also longer and heavier tracks. You see intermodal routes that are combined. You see here fuel cell vehicles with battery electric vehicles in many countries. And here, I will not go in details, you have the different route components that we want to challenge, so up to 1,300 kilometers. Then also other elements like mountains or multimodal, and also which are the KPIs. So all these elements will be examined in this CEPES project in real operations with real tracks, in real logistics missions. And here you can see different types of companies. We have even cool goods. We have different type of flows from parcel to FMCG to automotive. So then we have different elements. So then we have a very broad portfolio of assignments and missions. What we did in the first year was to look into needs and requirements from the different types of users, and we have gathered these requirements that will be fed into the demonstrations. I will not go into the details, but this report will be released at the end of this year, and then we will do in Liesa some communication and dissemination. And I invite you to join us, and then we segmented in different areas, from truck trailer technology to fleet integration into operations, safety and acceptance, and legal barriers. So then we identified, and we are still working on them, and this will be released at the end of this year, as I said. So, and here is coming to the end of my presentation, is sometimes we make the mistake looking into the future, thinking the future will be the same as it is today. So when we look into this paradigm change in terms what it means working with diesel technology that is very mature, improved for 100 years, with no interdependencies on range, load, payload, whatever, to this electrification and electric world, we cannot think future will look like the past. Particularly, we are struggling to see how a bank can put money into one truck company to invest in one particular truck with a particular size for a particular assignment, because this is very risky. So probably we'll need broader fleets, bigger fleets, and decouple ownership with driving with others. But this is, we are in the very early stages of this, and we'll see how the market will evolve. So the final thoughts is that market for heavy electric trucks is expected to be developed rapidly. And we have many of our members are now doing their trials and getting these learnings that I'm sharing with you. But we need a lot of effort in charging infrastructure. The medium long term, as I said, the bottleneck could be on the grids when adoption is beyond 10 to 20%. And then what I said on the looking into the TCO assessment or in portfolio of mission profiles use cases, and the implications for smaller fleets, as I was mentioning. And of course, LCA, energy mix, and actual contributions to greenhouse gas emissions reduction targets is very important. Some of our members are doing this assessment and say, if we would be able to transport all goods in Germany now with electric trucks in the same, imagine we could do that. We would only reduce 20-25% our greenhouse gas emissions because of the carbon content of the energy mix in Germany. So we're looking into scaling up this is the type of thinking or thought process of these companies that are actually having important targets for decarbonization up to 50% by 2030. So this is where they made the decision. We don't see this happening. We will work more on intermodality, which is also a complex bit, but let's go. Then there are still important levers, that is the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive that has been approved and seconded later. And this is very important because we'll mandate for companies, bigger companies at the start, but then later more and more companies, that they need to report on sustainability efforts, but not on what they have achieved, but how they have achieved and the action plans they want to put. And this is starting to become mandatory for financial year 2024, and they need to be published in 2025. So many from my members are looking into this, how we are going to do that, and it's going to become reality of truth, because it will be important to define how to do things. And at the end, there are a battery of measures by the Commission to prevent greenwashing. And this, I think, is very, very important, very challenging, but very important, also looking into our roadmap on measuring, reporting, and setting targets. What we think is that we have promoted projects like CEFES. In ALICE, our next step would be how we can prove this in a larger scale in corridors or ecosystems in which we can have hundreds, if not thousands, of electric trucks operating, and then having this from an holistic point of view with the different stakeholders working into that, which would be the requirements from the grid side, from the renewable energy side, from the charging point, from the vehicles and the operators, and this to boost the adoption. And with that, I'll finish my presentation. And as we always say in ALICE, two things. The first thing is that the best way to predict the future is to create it. And I think in this room, you are the ones that are at the stage of being able to create this feature. And in ALICE, we try to help everybody to do that. And then the other is, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And I think, as it was said, we need a very important, challenging